Most people believe that if food is heated thoroughly, it is safe, if it's steaming hot, if it reaches the right temperature, if the microwave timer runs long enough, then the job is done. Bacteria are gone and the meal is harmless. That belief feels logical, it feels responsible, and for decades it has been the standard advice. But here is what almost no one explains. Reheating food is not just about killing bacteria. Heat does more than sanitize, it changes chemistry. It alters fats, proteins, and natural compounds in ways that are completely invisible to the eye. You cannot see these changes, you cannot smell them, you cannot taste them, yet they occur every time certain foods are exposed to high temperatures for a second time. Almost no one over 70 has ever been told this, not during routine checkups, not during hospital visits, not in these simple instructions about leftovers stored in the refrigerator. And yet, as we age, our cells become more vulnerable to oxidative stress and inflammatory damage, making these small chemical shifts more relevant than they were decades ago. The fourth food on this list surprises even the most health conscious people. This conversation is not about fear, it is about long term cellular protection. To understand why, we need to briefly look at what heat truly does inside your food, why reheating matters more after 65. Over the past 2 decades working with older adults, one pattern has become increasingly clear to me. The same habit can affect a 35-year-old body very differently than it affects a 75-year-old one. That is not a weakness, it is simply biology. As we age, our internal repair systems shift. Antioxidant defenses, the compounds that neutralize free radicals, gradually decline. Mitochondrial repair, which keeps our cellular energy systems functioning efficiently, slows. Even the delicate lining of the digestive tract becomes more susceptible to oxidative stress and chronic irritation. This matters because reheating food introduces more than warmth. It can accelerate three specific biochemical processes. The first is lipid oxidation, where fats degrade into unstable byproducts. The second is nitrosamine formation, which can occur when nitrates and nitrites are exposed to heat under certain conditions. The third is protein cross-linking, where repeated heat alters protein structure in ways that may increase inflammatory burden. Now, let me be very clear. Reheating a meal once in a while is not catastrophic. The human body is remarkably resilient, but repeated exposure day after day, year after year, may contribute to cumulative cellular stress, especially after 65. With that context in mind, we'll examine 4 specific foods that deserve closer attention. What heat actually does. Before we look at the specific foods, it helps to understand what repeated heat actually does at the molecular level. I will keep this simple because the science matters, but it does not need to be complicated. First, oxidation. When fats are exposed to oxygen and then heated, their structure begins to change. Think of it as controlled damage. The fat molecules break down into smaller, unstable compounds. Some of these byproducts, such as lipid peroxides and aldehydes, can increase oxidative stress inside the body. Oxidative stress is simply an imbalance between damage and repair. When we are younger, we compensate easily. After 65, that balance becomes more delicate. Second, nitrosamines. Certain vegetables and processed foods contain natural nitrates. During storage, bacteria can convert nitrates into nitrites. When those nitrites are reheated at higher temperatures, they can form compounds called nitrosamines. These have been studied extensively because of their potential to damage DNA under certain conditions. Third, heterocyclic amines. These form when protein-rich foods are exposed to high heat, especially during repeated cooking. The amino acids in the protein react with natural sugars and create new compounds that may increase inflammatory burden. Finally, oxysterols. These are oxidized forms of cholesterol that develop when cholesterol-containing foods are reheated aggressively. Oxysterols are of interest because they can contribute to vascular and cellular stress. The important thing to remember is this: these reactions are silent. You cannot see them. You cannot smell them. You cannot taste them. Now let's examine the first food. Food hash 1. Reheated rice. Rice is one of the most widely consumed foods in the world. It is affordable, versatile, and easy to prepare in large batches. On its own, rice is not dangerous. It has nourished entire populations for centuries. The concern is not the rice itself. Repeated reheating is the issue. When rice is cooked and then allowed to cool slowly, it can become a temporary home for a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. This organism is commonly present in raw rice and usually destroyed during initial cooking. However, if cooked rice sits at room temperature for too long, the bacteria can multiply and produce toxins. Reheating may kill the bacteria, but certain toxins can remain heat stable. This is not meant to alarm you, but it highlights why storage timing matters. There is also a chemical consideration. Starch-rich foods like rice, when repeatedly heated at high temperatures, can form small amounts of acrylamide. Acrylamide develops when natural sugars react with the amino acid asparagine under intense heat. While levels vary depending on cooking method, repeated high temperature exposure increases the likelihood of formation. In addition, reheating alters the structure of starch itself. With each heating cycle, resistant starch can break down further, changing how quickly the rice affects blood sugar and digestion. I once spoke with a 72-year-old patient who prepared a large pot of rice every Sunday and reheated small portions multiple times throughout the week, sometimes returning leftovers to the refrigerator after partially warming them. She believed this was efficient and economical. When we reviewed safer storage practices, she was surprised that the reheating cycle itself could matter more than the original cooking. The practical steps are straightforward. After cooking rice, spread it out so it cools quickly, refrigerate it within 1 hour, reheat it only once, and avoid letting it sit at room temperature for extended periods. If leftovers remain after reheating, discard them rather than cycling them back into storage. Rice is a staple, and it can remain one, but handling it carefully reduces unnecessary risk. Protein-rich foods present a different challenge. Food hash 2, reheated chicken. Chicken is often described as the gold standard of lean protein. It is recommended for heart health, muscle maintenance, and blood sugar stability. And that recommendation is sound. Lean protein is healthy, but how it is reheated matters. When cooked chicken is exposed to high temperatures a second time, particularly dry or uneven heat, its proteins can undergo additional structural changes. One of the compounds that may form under these conditions is a group known as heterocyclic amines, or HCAs. HCAs develop when amino acids in protein react with natural sugars during high heat cooking. They are more commonly discussed in the context of grilling or charring, but reheating at high temperatures can contribute as well. In addition to HCAs, reheated poultry is susceptible to protein oxidation. This occurs when heat and oxygen interact with the muscle tissue, generating byproducts that may increase oxidative stress in the body. While the amounts formed during typical home reheating are not extreme, the concern lies in repeated exposure over time, especially in individuals whose antioxidant defenses are already reduced. Microwave ovens present another variable. They heat unevenly, creating localized hotspots where portions of the chicken may reach much higher temperatures than intended. Those hotter areas are where oxidation reactions accelerate most. Large epidemiological studies have suggested that frequent consumption of heavily browned or repeatedly reheated meats may correlate with higher markers of inflammation. These studies do not prove direct causation, but they do suggest moderation and cooking method matter. Practical adjustments are simple. Use lower heat settings when reheating chicken. Avoid charring or drying it out. Adding a small amount of moisture and covering the dish can reduce surface overheating. Whenever possible, consider eating leftover chicken cold in salads or wraps, rather than reheating it repeatedly. Chicken remains a valuable source of nutrition. The goal is not elimination, but smarter handling. Now we move to something considered extremely healthy. Before we continue, I'd like to pause for just a moment and hear from you. How many of these foods do you reheat regularly during the week? Rice? Chicken? Both? These are everyday staples in many homes, especially when cooking for 1 or 2 people. If you're comfortable, drop your age in the comments as well. I always find it helpful to see the wide range of life experience represented here. Many of you are in your 70s, 80s, even 90s, and still actively taking steps to protect your health. I read every comment, and your experiences shape future discussions on this channel. Now let's look at the third food. Food hash 3, reheated spinach and leafy greens. Spinach and other leafy greens are among the most nutrient-dense foods you can eat. They provide folate, magnesium, vitamin K, and a wide range of antioxidants that support cardiovascular and cellular health. Freshly prepared, they are unquestionably beneficial. The problem is not spinach, it's storage plus reheating. Leafy greens naturally contain nitrates. In their original form, dietary nitrates can actually support healthy blood flow and vascular function. However, once cooked spinach is stored in the refrigerator, naturally occurring bacteria can begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. This conversion is gradual and influenced by time and temperature. When nitrate-containing vegetables are reheated at higher temperatures, particularly in the presence of certain amino acids, chemical reactions can occur that form compounds known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines have been studied for decades because of their potential to damage DNA under specific conditions. While the amounts formed in home kitchens vary, repeated cycles of storage and reheating increase the opportunity for this transformation. It is important to keep perspective. Eating freshly cooked spinach is strongly associated with positive health outcomes. The concern arises when spinach is cooked, stored for extended periods, and then reheated multiple times throughout the week. For older adults whose antioxidant defenses may already be reduced, minimizing unnecessary exposure to oxidized or altered compounds becomes more relevant. The practical approach is simple. Whenever possible, prepare leafy greens fresh and consume them soon after cooking. If you have leftovers, store them in an airtight container and aim to eat them within a short window. Instead of reheating, consider eating leftover spinach cold in salads, blended into smoothies, or mixed into other dishes without additional heat. Avoid repeated heating cycles. Spinach remains a powerful ally for long term health when handled thoughtfully. The issue is not the vegetable itself, but how it is treated after cooking. The final food surprises most people. Food Hash 4 Reheated eggs. Eggs are one of the most complete foods available. They provide high quality protein, essential amino acids, choline for brain health, and important antioxidants such as lutein and zeaxanthin. Eggs are incredibly nutritious when freshly prepared. The concern arises not from eating eggs, but from how they are reheated. Egg yolks contain both fat and cholesterol. During the initial cooking process, some oxidation naturally occurs. When cooked eggs are cooled, stored, and then reheated at higher temperatures, particularly in a microwave, the fats and cholesterol can undergo further oxidation. This can lead to the formation of compounds known as oxysterols, which are oxidized derivatives of cholesterol. Oxysterols have been studied because they may contribute to vascular stress and inflammatory signaling when consumed in larger or repeated amounts. There is also the issue of sulfur containing amino acids, such as cysteine and methionine, which are naturally present in eggs. Repeated high heat can degrade these compounds, producing byproducts that may increase oxidative stress in the digestive tract. While occasional exposure is unlikely to cause harm, repeated reheating may add to cumulative cellular strain over time. Microwaves, in particular, create uneven heating. Portions of scrambled eggs can reach much higher temperatures than expected, accelerating oxidation reactions in localized areas. Again, perspective is important. Eggs remain a valuable and highly beneficial food. The goal is not elimination, but mindful preparation. The practical recommendations are straightforward. Whenever possible, eat eggs soon after cooking. If you prepare hard boiled eggs in advance, store them in their shells and eat them cold rather than reheating. Avoid repeatedly microwaving scrambled eggs or omelets that have already been cooked. Handled properly, eggs support brain and muscle health throughout aging. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Before we go further, it's important to bring this into balance. Occasional reheating is not catastrophic. The human body is resilient and equipped with detoxification systems, antioxidant defenses, and repair mechanisms designed to handle everyday exposures. One reheated meal is not a crisis. What matters more is dose and frequency. Reheating the same food repeatedly, exposing it to high heat over and over across months and years, may gradually increase exposure to oxidized fats, altered proteins, and reactive compounds. It is the cumulative effect that deserves attention, especially after 65, when cellular repair systems naturally slow. If you are immunocompromised, undergoing cancer treatment, or managing a chronic gastrointestinal condition, it is especially wise to discuss food handling habits with your healthcare provider. Individual circumstances always matter. This conversation is not about fear or restriction, it is about preventive optimization. Small adjustments in food preparation can reduce unnecessary stress on your cells over time. That is the goal, not perfection, but smarter daily habits. Safer leftover strategy. Let's turn this into something practical and manageable. You do not need to eliminate leftovers from your life. You simply need a safer strategy. First, plan portions carefully. Cooking slightly smaller batches reduces the likelihood that food will sit in the refrigerator for several days. If you live alone or cook for two, consider dividing meals immediately into single serving containers so they are not repeatedly opened, reheated, and returned to storage. Second, reheat only once. Once a portion has been warmed, avoid cooling it again for future use. Repeated heating cycles create more opportunity for oxidation and structural changes in fats and proteins. Third, when possible, use a low temperature oven rather than a microwave for protein rich foods. Ovens heat more evenly and reduce the formation of localized hotspots that can accelerate oxidation. If you do use a microwave, cover the food and use moderate power settings instead of maximum heat. Fourth, consider investing in a simple food thermometer, gentle reheating to safe internal temperatures rather than overheating until steaming excessively can reduce unnecessary chemical changes. Fifth, recognize that some foods do not need reheating at all. Leftover chicken can be added cold to salads, hard boiled eggs can be eaten chilled, cooked vegetables can be incorporated into cold dishes. Finally, avoid repeated heating cycles throughout the week. One cooking and one reheating should be the limit. These steps are not complicated. They are small, thoughtful adjustments that reduce long term exposure to unnecessary cellular stress. When we talk about reheating and cellular stress, it can sound abstract. Words like oxidation and inflammation feel distant from daily life, but they connect directly to something deeply personal: independence. Cellular health is the foundation of everything you do. Your mitochondria generate the energy that allows you to rise from a chair, climb stairs, or walk through the grocery store without fatigue. Your digestive lining absorbs nutrients that support muscle strength, immune balance, and cognitive clarity. When oxidative stress accumulates over time, it places an added burden on these systems. After 65, that burden matters more. Reducing unnecessary inflammatory exposure is not about chasing perfection. It is about stacking small protective layers. Eating freshly prepared foods when possible, avoiding repeated high heat cycles, and handling leftovers thoughtfully are simple ways to reduce strain on cells that are already working harder with age. Picture yourself at 80 or 85, carrying your own groceries from the car, remembering appointments without hesitation, driving to visit friends, or kneeling in the garden without joint stiffness holding you back. Those abilities are not determined by a single choice. They are shaped by thousands of small decisions made consistently over years. Reheating awareness is just one of those decisions. It is not dramatic, it is not restrictive, it is a quiet form of respect for your body and for the independence you want to preserve. Let's bring this together clearly and calmly. We discussed 4 common foods: rice, chicken, leafy greens, and eggs. None of them are inherently harmful. In fact, each one can be part of a healthy diet. The concern lies not in the food itself, but in how it is handled after cooking. We reviewed 3 key mechanisms: lipid oxidation, nitrosamine formation, and protein alteration through repeated high heat. These processes are invisible. You cannot taste them or smell them, but over time, they may add to your body's overall inflammatory and oxidative burden. And that brings us to one simple principle: minimize repeated high heat exposure whenever possible. Cook fresh when you can, reheat only once, use gentler temperatures. Avoid cycling the same meal through multiple heating rounds. Small adjustments, practiced consistently, protect cellular health in quiet but meaningful ways. Now, I'm curious, which of these 4 foods surprised you most? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this helpful, you'll want to watch my video on foods that protect your liver overnight. It builds on today's discussion and shows you how certain evening choices can support cellular repair while you sleep. Take good care of yourself